The red gown, an extended nightmare. They said it was just a dress. They said it was just fashion, an iconic moment in a career built on glamour and poise. But when Sydney Sweeney stepped onto the Emmys red carpet that night, everything around me seemed to pause. The air itself shifted, thickened, became almost sentient. A palpable weight hung in the space between us, something unspoken yet undeniable. Every camera flash seemed to hesitate, stuttering as if the lights themselves were unsure, unwilling to illuminate what they were about to witness. And the shadows, God. The shadows stretched unnaturally, writhing like dark fingers creeping along the edges of the stage, as if they were alive, hungry for something that no one should ever see. I wasn't watching from home that night. I wasn't a fan or a reporter. I wasn't even one of the usual crew members milling around the back hallways. I was there, backstage, but not in the way most people imagine. I was one of the invisible workers who guide the stars through the unseen veins of the theater. I knew the corridors, the hidden stairwells, the secret rooms that only a select few knew about. I had walked this space countless times before, with all the usual chaos of stylists shouting orders, shoes clicking sharply against polished floors, radios crackling with voices from every direction. But that night, there was something different. The usual hum of energy had gone silent. It wasn't the kind of silence that felt empty, but the kind that made the hairs on the back of your neck rise, like the world itself was holding its breath. Every instinct screamed for me to leave, to walk away, to abandon whatever was unfolding in front of me. Yet, I was frozen, rooted in place by an invisible force, a magnetic pull that tugged at my very core. I couldn't explain it, but I was compelled to watch. Sydney, who usually glowed under the spotlight, looked wrong. She moved with an eerie stillness, her eyes unblinking, her face blank, perfectly neutral. The calm of her expression contrasted the deep intensity in her gaze, an intensity so sharp it seemed almost inhuman. There was a weight behind her eyes, a tension coiled tight in the back of her skull. She was not just walking down the hallways anymore, she was being led by something, or someone, beyond the world of mortal comprehension. Her team, normally bustling with frantic energy, was eerily synchronized, moving around her like one single organism, each member falling into a rhythm that no one else could hear. It wasn't the usual calm of a practiced entourage. This was something else, something old and terrifying. They led her down a narrow, unmarked hallway, a place I hadn't noticed before. The walls, lined with mirrors, gave the unsettling impression that the reflection didn't quite match the movements of the real world. For just a fraction of a second, her reflection seemed to lag, moving a beat too slow, as though it didn't want to reveal something it knew I shouldn't see. I tried to breathe normally, but the air tasted different, thick, metallic, like it had been soaked in something I couldn't place. The scent of ozone, like lightning after a storm, mixed with the unmistakable sharpness of iron. It made my skin crawl. The further Sydney moved down the hallway, the more oppressive the atmosphere became, as if the space itself was alive, aware of our presence. They reached a door at the end of the hall. At first, it seemed unremarkable, smooth, ordinary, unmarked. But then I saw it. A faint shimmer, like a pulse of light, running along the edges of the doorframe, almost like a heartbeat. It was subtle, easy to dismiss, but in that moment, I knew something was terribly wrong. When the door opened, the air beyond it felt as though it were pressing against my lungs, as if the very atmosphere had become thick, viscous, alive. My feet refused to move. Every part of my body screamed to turn and run, yet I found myself drawn forward, as though the room beyond held the answers to questions I hadn't yet asked. Inside, the chamber was unlike any I had ever seen. The walls were draped in black fabric, thick and heavy, absorbing every sound, every breath. There were no windows, no way out. The floor was covered in candles, arranged in precise geometric patterns, triangles, circles, and at the center, an eye-shaped symbol that seemed to pulse with a faint, unnatural glow. But it was the thing at the center of the room that took my breath away. The gown. Not hung or draped, but hovering just above the floor, as if suspended by an invisible force. The fabric shimmered with an otherworldly light, rippling like liquid fire, casting shadows that stretched and twisted in ways that defied logic. The shadows moved of their own accord, alive, creeping towards me, as though they were aware of my presence, teasing my vision, making it hard to tell where they ended and the darkness began. And then came the whisper. It wasn't a voice you could hear in the traditional sense. It was more of a vibration, a hum that passed through my body, resonating deep in my bones. The language was unfamiliar, alien, yet somehow comprehensible. It wasn't a warning or a command, it was something far darker. My pulse quickened, my breath shallow, but my feet moved of their own accord. Step by step, I found myself drawn closer to the circle of candles, the gown, the impossible shadows that seemed to twist and stretch with intent. Sydney stepped forward. Her eyes, those eyes glowed with an intensity that stopped my heart. They were no longer human. They were white, unnatural, piercing through the dimness of the room, locking onto mine, freezing me in place. Her hands, though trembling ever so slightly, moved with deliberate calm as she entered the center of the circle. The gown seemed to respond, rippling as if it recognized her presence, anticipating her every movement. Figures cloaked in dark hoods circled her, chanting in that same strange language, low and deliberate. The sound reverberated through the floor, vibrating in my chest, my bones, my skull. The candles flickered violently, casting grotesque shadows across the walls. It felt like the room itself was alive, breathing, aware. Every inch of me screamed to run, to flee from the overwhelming sense of wrongness that flooded the space. But I couldn't move. I could only watch as Sydney's gown began to merge with her body, the fabric adhering to her skin without a zipper or a seam, as though it had become part of her, an extension of her very being. And as it did, her eyes began to glow brighter, white-hot, and the shadows began to twist violently, bending and contorting into grotesque, nightmarish shapes, faces, hands, things that looked almost human before dissolving back into darkness. One of the hooded figures approached, holding a small silver blade. It gleamed under the candlelight, sharp and merciless. With a swift motion, the figure cut a single strand of Sydney's hair, dropping it into a shallow bowl of deep red liquid. The liquid frothed slightly, and the smell of iron, warm, metallic, flooded the air, mixing with the already overwhelming stench that clung to the room. And that's when I realized this wasn't just some strange ritual or performance. It was something ancient, forbidden, something powerful, something that had been waiting for this moment, waiting for her, waiting for the gown. The ritual grew more intense. The hooded figures moved in perfect synchrony, drawing symbols in the air with gestures that seemed to warp the space itself. The candles flickered, the shadows shifted, and the very air seemed to hum with energy. The metallic scent grew thicker, clinging to my lungs, making it hard to breathe, hard to think. The room pulsed, thrumming with a dark, hungry energy, and in that moment, I understood. I wasn't just watching a ritual. I was witnessing the binding of a force, something far older and far more powerful than any of us could ever comprehend. The next day, I tried to speak to a coworker about what had happened, but his reaction was nothing. He didn't blink, didn't question, didn't acknowledge the terror I'd felt. "No one stays long enough to ask questions," he said flatly, his voice devoid of emotion. That was the moment I knew I'd crossed a line. I had seen something I shouldn't have, and they knew it. Later that night, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. One simple message: "Do not talk about the Red Room." And then, as if to confirm my worst fears, my NDA updated automatically. It had been months since I signed it, yet here it was, silently altering itself, as if someone or something was watching, waiting, making sure I knew the rules. Sleep became a nightmare. Every night the dreams came. The Red Room, the gown, Sydney's glowing eyes. The chanting, the shadows, the metallic scent of blood in the air. The more I tried to push it out of my mind, the stronger the visions became. They weren't just dreams anymore. They bled into reality. Objects in my apartment moved when I wasn't looking. Shadows shifted. The red glow flickered at the edges of my vision. And then one night, as I lay in bed, the red light flooded my room. My phone camera turned on without my command. And there, standing at the foot of my bed, was the figure. The same red gown. The same.